Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where experts in the field inform, educate and inspire the community to be healthier, balanced and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today is health coach Denise Mokadsi. We'll be discussing the topic, are you feeling powerless about your health? Epigenetics and a personalised lifestyle can help you prevent chronic disease. Welcome, Denise.
Hi, how are you going?
Denise, you say you have more control over preventing chronic disease than we think. Can you explain what you mean by that?
A lot of people think that we're at the mercy of our genes, and we're actually not. About 80% of our lifestyle diseases are related to how we're living. This sort of becomes around the topic of epigenetics. And epigenetics is probably something that people have heard before, but maybe not be quite sure about what it is. And a good way to understand it is to break it down. I like to break it down into the two parts. So the epi, the first part of the epigenetics refers to on top or above, and the genetics is our DNA. So most people understand, we've got genetics, we've got DNA. But a lot of the things that we do and how we show up in the world is a result of how those genes are expressed. These genes can be altered by things that sit on top of the genes or affect the genes, and that's the part of the epigenetics. So it really does come down to lifestyle, and all of the things that we do in our lifestyle influences where these markers might go or how these genes are either turned on or silenced. So that's how we can have a lot of control, more control over what happens to our health. And we're not really at the mercy of just getting a chronic disease or an illness. Most of us who, how we do end up getting sick differs so much. You might know someone that has lived a certain way, like maybe smoked their whole life and has never been sick. Or someone else has gotten lung cancer. Why is it that we can do similar things to other people, but our results can be very different? And that is really because of our genetics.
Can you give us an example of how tailoring an approach to someone's genetics or their personal biology could make a difference?
Tailoring approach is really helpful because it does save a lot of guesswork. People can try lots of different things, and you might have heard someone does very well with intermittent fasting or to be on a keto diet. So someone might try to do that as well and find that it doesn't work for them. So there's no problem with people trying things. That's definitely a strategy, but it can put people into more of a stress response if they're doing something that's against their genetics or their natural biology. And so we can personalise particular strategies for people by understanding what their biology is and what their DNA or genetics is best suited to, and personalised strategies for them knowing that. So they don't have to go through the guesswork. So I can give you some examples around all the lifestyle strategies or lifestyle things that we do. Very common, food. Everyone eating different foods can be very challenging, trying to work out a different diet, like should I be vegetarian, should I be carnivore? But when we do genetic testing, we can see that someone's biology will be better suited to metabolizing vegetables, for example, or they're better responding with carbohydrates, or better responding to proteins or fats. So this can help us set a diet or a nutritional approach around the things that suit their body better. So if they're very responsive to carbohydrates, eating a diet with more carbohydrates is going to be very beneficial for them, rather than avoiding carbohydrates because they think that they should, or that avoiding carbohydrates for someone else was good for that person, but it might not necessarily be good for this person. Similarly, with exercise and workout, you see a lot of people trying to do workouts that worked really well for other people, like the HIIT kind of style, the F45 and the CrossFit and all of the high intensity kind of intervals where people can get results if their body is suited to that kind of training. Someone who has the genetics that is better suited to strength training or endurance type training would do better or get better results doing that kind of activity. And so we just want to try to avoid putting the body under unnecessary stress by knowing how to match people's lifestyles to, what they've been born with, basically.
Denise, what are some tips you've got for our viewers in terms of them taking control of their long-term health?
Definitely for long-term health, so that we're avoiding or preventing the chronic health issues that we see, the diabetes, the obesity, osteopenia, osteoporosis, all these kind of chronic diseases. We can really avoid those by 3 simple things. Well, there's more, but I will limit it to 3. So thinking about eating healthy, and while we can personalise how that might look for somebody, what foods exactly they're eating, how much of certain types of foods, so what percentages of carbohydrates, proteins and fats, and also the timings of when people eat. That's really important too, the chronobiology of when we should be eating, like how our body best metabolises foods. For most people, avoiding processed foods and eating whole foods in their natural state is going to be a really good tip for longevity and healthy living into the future with, trying to avoid those chronic illnesses. Sleep's really important. So chronic illness really comes down to how can we manage the stress on our body. And if we can get decent sleep, 6 to 8 hours per night, that's very beneficial for healthy aging and longevity, because when we sleep, so much of repair and recovery is happening. And if we shortchange that, then we're going to miss out on recovering properly, that we get this continued stress day after day after day, which really builds up and can bring us into those chronic ill health states. And just having a really mindful mindset, I guess, a positive mindset, because how we see ourselves and the people around us and our belief systems is a very big influence on our stress load, like how we manage what we're experiencing day to day. So I think getting on top of those 3 things is going to help people move the dial quite a lot towards healthy aging and living, longer, healthier. Another important thing is that we can try lots of things, but if someone's really struggling, it's probably better to go and seek professional advice so that you can get on top of the things and they don't get worse. I would always recommend seeking professional advice to help people with their health and well-being where they're stuck.
Thanks for such valuable information, Denise. If you'd like to know more about how epigenetics can help prevent chronic disease and improve your lifestyle, and more about Denise Mokadsi, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we have another interesting guest with another interesting topic.
Stay tuned. After the break, naturopath, respiratory specialist and published author Julie Rudakova will be talking about breathing retraining and its importance. Welcome back. Our second guest is naturopath, respiratory specialist and published author Julia Rudakova, and she will be talking about breathing retraining and its importance. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is such a fantastic topic. I love talking about that.
So can you tell us a bit about breathing retraining and its importance?
I always start talking to people about the rule of 3. And the rule of 3 tells us about our survival needs. And an average human person can't live without food for, on average, 3 weeks, without water on average 3 days, and without air up to 3 minutes. And that just shows us a hierarchy of importance of where we should put our attention to. And breathing is automatic. So the question that I get asked a lot is, why is it so important? Because we breathe. What's wrong with how I breathe? And the thing is that in our modern life, we do get a lot of triggers, a lot of stresses. And I'm not talking about emotional stresses or mental. It's chemical stresses from the environment, from our food, especially packaged food. And that affects how we breathe through the nervous system. So when we deal with a stressor, and if we talk about chemical stresses, it tells the body that there is danger. When there is danger, the body will start breathing differently, as if you're running away from a tiger. And if that happens day in, day out, that becomes a habit. That becomes a pattern. A pattern is formed, and the body keeps breathing in a certain way. That's where breathing retraining comes into play. And what we do, we look at what habits have been formed up to now, and we retrain the body to reverse that pattern. So if they have a very obvious chest breathing, so breathing with the upper chest, you notice that the shoulders are moving when you breathe. So some people, when they sit up straight, you can noticeably see the movement of the shoulders. So that's not functional. This tells the body that you need to be alert, that it's stress, that you're running away from danger, and that's not a very optimal way of living, really. So nasal breathing above all. So we need to reestablish nasal breathing for proper function of the whole body, because our breathing affects our pH in the blood. It affects relaxation and contraction of the muscles, the muscle recovery, and we are all muscle. Our digestive tract is a muscle, contracting, pushing the food down. Our airways contracting, relaxing. Our heart is a muscle. So we need to help the body function properly, and breathing is the first step to do that.
Can you demonstrate one of the techniques with breathing retraining?
For the fun of it, today we can do a bit of samurai breathing, I call it. So I always go back to that story that in ancient Japan, when they picked a young boy to be a samurai or a young man, they would do a breath test, breathing test, and they would use a feather for that test. So I do have a feather with me, and I'll show you how to do that. What that test does, it shows us whether the body is at its optimal. So whether the body can slow down and breathe gently without force through the nose and slowly, right? When we have that, we know that we can relax and we can focus, right? So relaxation and focus, they come hand in hand. So I have this feather with me. It's a beautiful feather. And this is what I give to kids who come to do breathing retraining with me, and adults as well, because it's fun. And it brings that concentration into the breathing process, because breathing can be relaxing. You can really relax into that and forget that we're doing the retraining. So what we do is we sit up straight. So if you sit up straight and imagine that you have a string attached to the top of your head and someone is pulling the string up, and your whole spine is nice and straight, and you have a fine feather under your nose. So we can use our finger just to feel the warmth, how much air we breathe out, and focus on that for a little bit. And once you get that normal breathing, so it's just normal breathing, whatever comes, when you have that and you feel that warmth on your finger, and relax into that, the back is straight. And the next step here is to breathe in a little bit less. Just imagine in your mind's eye that you breathe a little bit less, right? And you will notice that there is not as much warmth. So it's still warm, you're alive, yeah, the air goes in and out, but it's a little bit less, not as much air hits the finger, right? And with the feather, it gets a little bit more fun, because you can see the fine fibers. They move when I speak, they move when I breathe. So with the feather under the nose, the aim is to be able to breathe very, very gently, just for a minute or two, so that the fine fibers, they stay relatively still. They move a little bit because they're really, really fine, as you can see. You don't need a feather. You can just use your finger and imagine that airflow, and that you breathe less and less and less. not to the point of dizziness, but just as a game, as a little play, to see how gently and slowly and quietly you can breathe for a minute or two.
And what tips would you give to people who are interested in breathing retraining?
Right. So first and foremost, we need to be aware. What is happening in the body? And there is a lot of mindful practices nowadays. And one of the best practices for mindfulness is being aware of your breathing pattern. Drop into the body. See what's happening with the muscles, where the diaphragm is moving, whether you're breathing with your chest, whether the mouth is open, or you're okay to breathe through the nose, or sometimes it's difficult and you're a bit blocked and congested. So what's happening there? So just that awareness, and you can weave that. You don't need to find 10 minutes, I need to do my breathing and find some time and space. It can be as easy as you stop at the red traffic light and you can check in with the body. What's happening? Where is my breathing today? What is happening with my chest, with my diaphragm? Am I breathing through the nose? Is it heavy? Can I hear myself breathe? So all those questions, and then you address that one symptom at a time. And always seek advice of a professional breathwork facilitator, qualified naturopath, medical professional, to help you on that journey.
Thank you so much, Julia, for those insights. If you'd like to know more about breathing retraining and Julia, you can visit her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. After the break, we'll be back with another interesting guest and another interesting topic.
Stay tuned. After the break, psychotherapist specialising in hypnotherapy Julie Makin will be talking about, are you in control of your anger or is it controlling you? Welcome back. Our last guest is Julie Makin, a psychotherapist specialising in hypnotherapy, and we will be discussing an important question. Are you in control of your anger or is it controlling you? Welcome, Julie.
Hi, thank you.
So tell us, how does someone know if they're in control of their anger or not?
Okay, well, firstly, I would say that there is no control with anger. So what happens when we get angry is our prefrontal cortex actually just switches off. We go into that fight-flight scenario, and we have no logic, we have no impulse control anymore. So really, I would say that if you're experiencing anger, you're actually not in control. And the way I look at anger is a subsidiary of fear. So what I would ask you next is, what is it that you fear? What is at your base of what it is that you actually fear? What is it that you're avoiding asking yourself?
Okay, so how does anger connect with fear and a deeper belief about yourself?
Okay, so the way it actually works, when we go to the doctor, okay, generally we might have a rash or a physical wound on us, or we're feeling sick or something like that, and we go to the doctor. But when we have something like an internal wound, it gets touched and then we respond from that pain and that hurt. Therefore, the anger comes up. So when I'm not feeling good enough, I'm feeling really hurt and I've got pain, that is going on. And therefore then I am responding with that anger, and I'm putting blame onto that other person. I felt like my words weren't important to this other person. I felt like my words weren't important. And if my words aren't important, then I'm not important. And if I'm not important, I'm not good enough. This is my base belief. So when my base belief of I'm not good enough gets touched like a wound inside. And when I worked it out, okay, so it really has to do with my base belief about how I feel about myself, that I am not good enough. I know that is what I need to work on. the I'm not good enough. I don't matter.
Do you have advice for our viewers on changing those beliefs they might have about themselves?
Okay, so just a few practical tips. Firstly, if you're starting to feel that anger coming on, I invite you to scrunch your left fist. Make a left fist. Okay, you might also like to try, pushing your tongue up against the roof of your mouth. Perhaps if you're having a discussion with someone else, sitting down at a table and having a discussion, because that also helps when we're seated. But if you really feel that that anger is getting over and above what you're able to contain in that moment, perhaps just say to the other person, look, it's getting a little bit too much for me right now. I just need to take a moment, so I'm going to leave, and maybe we can come back and discuss this, when I feel more balanced, more level. I would say that the first step is simply recognizing it, having an awareness. To me, this is all part of body intelligence, what I've been studying for years. And just coming back to being what is right for you. Start looking at what is right for you. So when you start responding, in the anger, have an awareness. Stop. If you can stop and just recognize what's going on in the body, and, start asking yourself, is this right for me? What is it that I truly fear? What's going on here? And once you start pinpointing that, then maybe you can start dealing with it. You can have acceptance over it. Maybe your second step might actually be then seeking professional advice from a therapist, a professional therapist. And once again, looking at the different modalities, because not every modality is right for a particular person. But you know what? You don't have to go and talk about your feelings and how, you don't have to get long-winded about the here and now, because what I believe is that the here and now is surface talk. We want to get right down to the root cause so that you no longer have that anger that's coming up. What I would say in the future is for people who perhaps experience anger, there's an emotion that's coming up there with it. But when we're assertive, when we're saying what it is that we need, then we're stating it flatly. There's no emotion attached, and we are able to get our point across without the emotion. But the anger holds the emotion. So assertiveness is where we want to be. It's a place of safety within the body. You're actually probably getting your message across to the other person a lot better than what you would if it's in anger, because when you're in anger and you're yelling and getting upset with the other person, they're probably, going into fight flight, where their, prefrontal cortex is turned off and they're in the emotional state, and, they're scared, they're worried, so they're not going to take on what it is that you have to say. So it's so much better for you and so much better for the receiver to, for you to deliver your message assertively, not from an angry place.
Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you, Julie.
Yeah, no worries.
If you would like to know more about controlling your anger and Julie Makin, please visit her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. That's all we have time for tonight. Until next week, goodbye.
If you'd like to know more about our show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.